a graph that provides the answer to his question. As you can hear, the fourth biggest industry is the industry that Adam and his colleagues work in, consulting. So his point is that they're in a good position to increase sales. It's an effective way to finish his presentation and highlight the opportunity they face as a company. What are some other ways we can answer our own questions by presenting a visual? Let's run through some more examples.
This map will show you just how broad our national reach is.
So, on this chart, you can see exactly how much sales dropped last quarter.
As you can see, we saved approximately $400,000.
Have a look here, and you'll see just how crowded our market is.
Now, if you tuned into the last lesson and the first part of Adam's presentation, you'll know that some listeners have to leave early. Let's hear how Adam deals with this.
Adam, can I interrupt for one sec? This is really great, and I know we're going to get to Q&A soon, but I know Chris and maybe one or two others have to leave at 11, so you'll pass on these slides later, right?
Yes, definitely. I'll send them out this afternoon. And if you need to head out, please do. If you want to follow up with questions or whatever, I'll be happy to.
You could just let people leave quietly and continue with your presentation, but a good presenter will acknowledge those who have to leave early. You want them to leave feeling a sense of completion, and you want them to know that they'll have access to any information that they miss. You'll hear too that Adam encourages those who have to leave to follow up with him later if they have any questions. In this way, Adam is taking good care of his listeners. Even though they don't need his permission, he has nicely acknowledged that if they need to head out or leave, they should. Let's practice some other ways of acknowledging that people have to leave.
I understand some of you will need to sign off at 2 today.
If you need to leave early, please just go ahead, and I'll share the info later.
Ben, I know you have a hard stop at 10:30.
Christina and Ian can only stay for half an hour, so let's keep that in mind.
Adam has timed things perfectly. He has covered all his main ideas before some of the people had to leave. Now it's time to finish up with a recap, or summary, of his ideas.
Okay, so let's do a recap. As I've tried to show, there are 3 big opportunities here. 1, we can increase sales significantly by improving our follow-up. 2, we'd be smart to focus our biz dev on the medium-sized to large companies. And 3, there are a few key growth industries where our expertise is needed and wanted.
As Adam has organized his presentation well, it's easy for him to present a clear summary. He's talked about 3 big opportunities, and he gives a 1-sentence summary of each opportunity. When you give a presentation, you want your ideas to be memorable, and one way to help your audience remember is to give them a simple, concise summary of your key points. Let's run through some more ways of summarizing key points at the end of a presentation.
As we've seen, there are 3 different ways we can approach this problem.
So, to summarize, we are expecting cuts to both staffing and marketing.
Today, I've tried to show that although revenue is up, profit has been decreasing.
Okay, what have we just discussed? Well, first, we looked at our team structure.
Now that Adam has summarized his ideas, he can transition to the final part of the presentation. But first, we'll hear how one listener kindly informs Adam he has to leave.
Sorry, Adam, I'll need to jump off now. But just wanted to say thanks. Great presentation. Maybe we can follow up on some of this later in the week? See you guys.
Thanks, Chris. Catch you later. Okay then. Let me just nix the shared screen here so we can all see each other, and now I'd just like to open it up. See if you have any questions or comments. Anyone? Yes, Nancy. I see your hand raised there.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So, just a little question about company size.
If you've done a good job of building rapport with your listeners, they'll likely respond like Chris, by showing appreciation. At this point, it's time for Adam to transition to the Q&A part of the presentation. First, he nixes or closes the shared screen, so there are no distractions. Then he says he'd like to open it up. As he explains, this means he will take any questions or comments. And he then watches the screen for anyone who has their hand up, like Nancy, or indicates in another way they have a question. What are some other ways of opening it up for questions? Let's try some more examples.
All right. At this point, I'd like to see if anyone has any questions.
So, I've done a lot of talking. Now I want to give you a chance for questions.
I'd like to open it up now and see if anyone wants to ask about these changes.
Okay, let's pause there. Does anyone have any questions or comments about all this?
As we've heard today, there are a few good ways of wrapping up and transitioning to a Q&A at the end of your presentation. You might have people leaving early, which can be distracting, but rather than ignoring it, you can acknowledge it, as Adam has done. If they can't stick around for the Q&A at the end, they can always follow up with questions afterward. Now let's practice some of the language we learned in today's lesson. Imagine you are wrapping up a presentation about your ideas for improving the company's website. I'll give you some suggestions for what you can say as you transition to the Q&A. We'll guide you through each step in the practice and provide an example answer for each step. Ready? Let's give it a go. Start by asking if anyone can guess how much site usage has decreased in the past year.
Answer. So, can anyone guess how much site usage has decreased in the past year?
If I had to guess, I would say 5%.
Now, thank the person before saying that the next slide shows it's gone down 15%.
Answer. Thank you for that. But as this next slide shows, it's gone down 15%.
That's huge. And sorry, but just looking at the time, I think some people have to leave soon.
Next, acknowledge that a couple people from marketing have to leave early.
Answer. Yes, I understand a couple of people from marketing will have to leave early.
Thanks. And we can catch those people up later in the day.
Now say that to sum up, the website is dated, and you have 3 ideas to improve it.
Answer. Great. Now, to sum up, the website is dated, and I think there are 3 ways to improve it.
Yes, I would say that you've definitely shown us what needs to be done.
Finally, say you'd like to open it up now to to questions and comments.
Answer. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments.
Now let's practice some of the vocabulary we've covered in this lesson. In a moment, you'll hear a series of sentences with a word replaced with a beep. Repeat each sentence, including the missing word. For example, if you hear,
I'm sorry, but I'll have to out in about 15 minutes.
you can say,
I'm sorry, but I'll have to head out in about 15 minutes.
after each response, we'll provide the correct answer. Let's begin.
Anyone want to venture a how much sales increased last month? Answer. Anyone want to venture a guess how much sales increased last month?
An important part of every salesperson's job is biz. Answer. An important part of every salesperson's job is biz dev.
I'd just like to finish up by the main points of my presentation. Answer. I'd just like to finish up by recapping the main points of my presentation.
We are looking for someone with in accounting and tax law. Answer. We are looking for someone with expertise in accounting and tax law.
We've reached the end of this lesson, the second in our series about online presentations. We've learned how to pose a question to your audience and answer that question with a memorable visual. We've also learned how to acknowledge people who have to leave early, summarize key points, and transition to a Q&A. For more practice, premium members can access the online quizzes and PDF transcripts for this and other lessons on the BEP website. Not a member yet? Then head over to www.businessenglishpod.com and sign up for a free trial to preview some of the extra resources available to members. Thanks for listening, and see you again soon.
You're listening to Business English Pod, the business English podcast for professionals on the move.
Hello, and welcome back to Business English Pod for today's lesson on video conferences and presenting online. Today, we're going to focus on handling questions and managing the Q&A. Before we get started, a quick reminder that this lesson, along with hundreds of others, is available as a free download from the BEP website. Premium members can also access a PDF transcript and online quizzes for every lesson. If you'd like to take a free trial to preview some of these extra resources, just head over to www.businessenglishpod.com. With the rise of hybrid teams, presenting online is just a regular part of work for many professionals. And while the basics of delivering information in a virtual setting may seem simple, interacting with your audience and dealing with questions feels very different online than in person. Skilled presenters have a variety of tricks for ensuring a productive Q&A or question and answer session. For example, when someone asks a good question, you might redirect it to the entire group. That gives the Q&A more of a discussion feel. And if people aren't asking questions, you can ask some yourself. Of course, sometimes people introduce ideas that you don't really have time to explore. In this case, you can suggest more discussion at a later time. Good presenters are also ready to admit any limitations to what they've presented. Nobody has all the answers, so don't pretend you do. And finally, once the Q&A is finished, it's a great idea to encourage people to follow up with you later if they have any other questions. In today's dialogue, we'll listen to the end of a presentation by Adam, a business consultant. He's handling some questions and encouraging discussion after presenting his ideas on ways to increase sales. We'll also hear Adam's colleague, Nancy, and his boss, Heather, ask questions and participate in the discussion. As you listen to the dialogue, try to answer the following questions. 1. What question does Nancy ask that Adam redirects to the entire group? 2. What question does Adam ask everyone to encourage them to share their ideas? 3. What key point does Adam admit they're still not sure about?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So, just a little question about company size. I get that medium and big companies have more money to spend on consultants. But just thinking over time, wouldn't early growth be a good focus too?
Thanks, Nancy. That's a good question. And before I tell you what I think, maybe I'll just put that to the entire group. Thoughts about company size? Yeah, Heather.
I'd say that depends a lot on the industry. There are a ton of early growth startups around, but that's not our bread and butter, and I don't think it ever will be. But healthcare, seniors, those service-based companies, definitely early growth in that sector has huge potential. Something I'd like to dig into more at our next strategic ops meeting.
Fantastic. And I'd say you're bang on. Early growth companies in these expanding industries are definitely fertile ground. And I look forward to continuing this discussion in the ops meeting. So, any other questions? No? Then maybe I can pose one for you. I mentioned some follow-up services and value adds. Any others you can think of? Nancy again.
Yeah. When I worked at McGillis, we built a 1-year follow-up into every strategic planning contract. Typically, it was a facilitated team check-in, but sometimes something more robust.
I like that. More to talk about there for sure. Maybe that's something else for the ops meeting. Heather?
One step ahead of you. Thanks, Nancy. I like it. So, Adam, if I can ask a different question here. You suggested that repeat business was higher in situations where the consultant did the follow-up work rather than the client coordinator. Are we certain there's a cause-effect thing going on there?
Well, I will say that it's not a huge data set we're working with. So, I like that you use the word suggest, because that's what the data is doing. It's definitely a limitation. And we'd need more info to confirm that's true.
Yeah, because I'm wary of shifting admin tasks to consultants unless there's a clear return on it.
Fair enough. I've already asked Olivia to take a closer look, so we'll have to return to this once we get more data. Now, just to be mindful of time here, if anybody has any further questions, I'll be happy to follow up in Teams or call me anytime. Please don't hesitate to share your thoughts. And with that, I'll wish you a good rest of the day. Thanks, everyone.
Now let's go through the dialogue again and look at the language and techniques Adam used to manage the Q&A. Just before this dialogue begins, Adam has asked the group if they have any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So, just a little question about company size. I get that medium and big companies have more money to spend on consultants. But just thinking over time, wouldn't early growth be a good focus too?
Thanks, Nancy. That's a good question. And before I tell you what I think, maybe I'll just put that to the entire group. Thoughts about company size? Yeah, Heather.
Nancy is wondering if they should put more focus on younger companies if they want to increase sales. Adam could simply give an answer to the question, but instead he decides to put the question to everyone. There are a couple of reasons you might do this. First, if you think many people will have opinions about the topic, you'll be giving the group a chance to discuss these. That's Adam's purpose here. He knows that people will have some ideas on this question. Secondly, if you're not quite sure what the answer is, you might find out from others or gain a bit of time to think. What are some other ways we can put a question to the entire group? Let's try some more examples.
Great question, Phil. I'm curious if anyone else has thoughts on that issue.
Okay, can anyone tell us where these concerns are coming from?
I have an idea about that, but I'd like to hear some other perspectives first.
Just how big is the Shanghai factory? Does anyone have any info on that?
As we can hear, Heather certainly has some opinions on whether they should focus on early growth companies.
I'd say that depends a lot on the industry. There are a ton of early growth startups around, but that's not our bread and butter, and I don't think it ever will be. But healthcare, seniors, those service-based companies, definitely early growth in that sector has huge potential. Something I'd like to dig into more at our next strategic ops meeting.
Fantastic. And I'd say you're bang on. Early growth companies in these expanding industries are definitely fertile ground. And I look forward to continuing this discussion in the ops meeting.
Heather provides some great support for the potential or possibilities of focusing on early growth companies in some industries. And this matches Adam's opinion, which he indicates by saying Heather is bang on, or totally correct. It sounds like they'll be talking more about this idea in a future strategic ops or operations meeting. Now let's hear if there are any other questions from the audience.
So, any other questions? No? Then maybe I can pose one for you. I mentioned some follow-up services and value adds. Any others you can think of? Nancy again.
Adam doesn't immediately hear any other questions about his presentation, but he's got more time for discussion, so he decides to ask a question of his own. This is a great way of getting people thinking and talking a bit more. Sometimes if you start with a question, others are more likely to ask questions of their own. In this case, Adam is inviting people to add to his ideas for follow-up services and value adds. A value add is anything extra we provide to a transaction to make sure clients are happy. Asking your own question is a great way to encourage your audience to ask questions of their own and focus their thinking. So let's practice some more examples.
I went over our biggest costs, but does anyone think I've missed anything?
Anyone have thoughts on those two possibilities I've just outlined?
Are there any other ways we might increase sales this quarter?
I'm curious if any of you have ideas about the causes of the problems I mentioned.
Nancy has some ideas about follow-up services. Let's listen.
Yeah. When I worked at McGillis, we built a one-year follow-up into every strategic planning contract. Typically, it was a facilitated team check-in, but sometimes something more robust.
I like that. More to talk about there for sure. Maybe that's something else for the ops meeting. Heather?
Nancy's idea is to have a meeting or check-in with clients long after their initial engagement. Adam receives this idea very positively, and while he appreciates the input, they don't really have time to fully explore the idea during the Q&A. You have to be a bit careful when you invite ideas and input from your audience. It's very easy to get sidetracked and spend too much time discussing related topics. To prevent this, it's a good idea to suggest continuing the discussion at a later time. Keeping the Q&A focused is an important skill, so let's try some more ways of suggesting further discussion after your presentation.
We don't have time to look at that today, but we could put it on our agenda for next week.
Considering we only have a few minutes left, maybe we can talk about that more tomorrow.
If people are interested, how about we schedule a follow-up discussion on this?
I really think that question would be a good topic for our next staff meeting.
Remember that one purpose of asking people for input is to get them thinking and sharing ideas. That might in turn encourage people